program will go about an hour and 45 minutes. And then if you're going to stay on for Laverna, it'll be about 2 hours and 5-10 minutes. Okay? Thank you all for your patience. Now give it over to Father John Quigley.
Before we do that, I'm going to mute everybody. Well, Father Quigley, you'll have to come up after I mute.
Okay. Okay, well, good morning. Let's take just a moment here to center ourselves together as a community, as a group of brothers, sisters. And we think of all the people we have met in our lives, especially those of us who have been involved in the military, in protecting and defending lives, freedom. And we ask you, Most Holy One, our beautiful and generous God, that you would protect us, that you would indeed bless us, so that we can become closer and closer to you and to one another. We pray on this feast also of Martin de Tours, a soldier, a military man, and Francis, a military man, that we can look to them in their journeys, their conversions, their entry into the mystery of your love. That we can take courage as you invite us to grow, to develop, to deepen our thoughts, our awareness, our commitments. We ask your blessing on all those we love and who have loved us. And we pray for all military brothers and sisters in this country and throughout the world. We think of those who have lost their lives and given everything in the great world wars in history. And bless us through our experience and our understanding of our experience, that we may be wise, that we may be generous, that we may work for peace. We thank you again for those who have gone before us and those who stand on either side of us now. May you be blessed as we celebrate this day together, as we continue on our pilgrimage with one another, as we remember Francis and Claire and their lives, their commitments, their community with us. We pray with them within your Son, Jesus Christ, who is wounded and risen. Jesus, who is our way, the truth, and the life, now and forever. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, John. Just a quick, once again, I'd like to thank all the veterans who are participating in this virtual pilgrimage. Thank you for your service. Thank you for being here. I am reminded Rick Tritley is a vice president here at Viterbo University. He's a member of our pilgrimage staff for veterans. Rick did a tribute to veterans at St. Bonaventure, and one of the things he said in his tribute is we should remember Veterans Day as a time of celebration. On the 11th hour and the 11th day of the 11th month, it was when the peace accord was signed that ended World War I. It was originally Armistice Day. That later became Veterans Day, but at that moment in history, is memorialized as the time that peace was established after war. And that is what we celebrate today. Memorial Day is the day that we mourn those who served and paid the ultimate price, but this is a day to really celebrate those who serve, and our hats go off in deep gratitude for all the veterans who are participating in this. Thank you. Now, I'm going to hand things over to Andy Trito. Andy is the communications director for the Franciscan Pilgrimage Program. If you go online and put in Pilgrimage Perspective, he's got a number of YouTube shows that he's put together of various pilgrimages. One is the veteran pilgrimages and Francis and PTSD. Another one's the high school pilgrimages. One's on the Camino. I encourage you, when you have some free time, to go look on YouTube at those. Andy really has put together some fabulous things out there. And what we're going to do today is we're going to hand it over to Andy, and he's going to do a live version of his Pilgrimage Perspective.
Thanks, Greg. I appreciate that. Like you said, my name is Andy Trito. I'm the communications director for the Franciscan Pilgrimage Program. So today we're doing, like Greg said, a live episode of the Pilgrimage Perspective, which we do a little bit more of a deep dive into what pilgrimage is. Usually we go by the different kinds of pilgrimage. Like you said, high school, we've done veterans, but today it's a more unique experience because I get to talk with the pilgrims rather than leaders, which I hope this actually spins off into something a little bit bigger, and being able to talk to pilgrims is a thrill, because I've been on pilgrimage twice, and just having that deep connection with you all, it feels like I know you a little bit more. So we're going to talk to some of the veterans who have gone on pilgrimage and their experience. I'm going to start with Frank Morales. Frank, are you here? I thought I saw you a little bit earlier.
Yes, I'm here. How you doing?
Oh, good. It's nice to meet you face to face. I know we've talked through email and on the phone. I guess if you can call this face to face. But I want to thank you for your service. For those who don't know, Frank is a Silver Star winner for his time in the service. So thank you for all that you have given. And I want to echo everybody else. Thank you for the sacrifice of time. I think sometimes that goes by the wayside, is that people miss Christmases and holidays and just time with family. So I want to thank you for all that you have given for people like myself. So I want to thank you for that. Frank, you had a very unique experience in going on pilgrimage, and you work with college veterans as your day-to-day job at St. Bonaventure University. What is the pilgrimage experience like for those who go from St. Bonaventure? What was your experience like, and why do you kind of stay connected with that?
Thank you, Andy. Before I start, I'd like to say thank everyone for joining us today. Our message today at our university was given by Dr. DiPiero, our president. He gave some great sentiments about our veteran programming, veterans in general. Because of the university, we're allowed to do the program we do so that student veterans are allowed to attend the pilgrimage. So with that being said, I run the veterans program here at St. Bonaventure, and my main mission here is to help veterans with their transitioning from being a soldier to a student. As everybody knows who has an education, who's been to college, that first year can be pretty tough, the stresses of school or whatnot. But then you add the combat on top of that. So now you have a veteran who is going through some transitioning difficulties of school, and then also dealing with the combat stress or the demons that he's still dealing with from the service. So that's where I come in to help them with that transitioning. And at the end of the school year, as they're still a little bit stressed out of how they've done and whether they want to continue or not, this is where the pilgrimage comes in. This is where we raise money here at St. Bonaventure so that the veteran goes at no cost to himself. The first year that I sent 5 veterans over to the pilgrimage, and they came back so motivated and excited that they wanted to continue working on raising money for veterans to go every year. The following year, 7 of us went to include a Gold Star mother. Our Gold Star mother, Candace Clemens. If you don't know what a Gold Star mother is, that means you lost your son or daughter in combat. Candace Clemens is really close to us, and we have a connection. Before I came here, I was stationed in Fort Drum, New York, and I was assigned to the same unit her son was in. During our first deployment, we had a cache explosion, and her son passed away, and my platoon was the first ones in sight. At that time, I had no idea about St. Bonaventure University. I had no idea where the family was from. So forward 3 years after my second deployment, I came here to St. Bonaventure to teach ROTC, and I found out this is where that family was from. So ever since I've been here, Candace Clemens has been a great support to all veterans in our community, has been a super great support for our veterans here at St. Bonaventure University. She does a lot of food gatherings for us. She gets supplies, school supplies for us. She's there for the students while in school, or even if they need needs outside of school. She's just a blessing. So the veterans thought, the student veterans at St. Bonaventure thought that it would be a great experience for her to experience the pilgrimage along with us. So we did help her to join us in the pilgrimage, and what an exciting time it was, because we did spend Memorial Day up in Assisi, and to have an actual Gold Star mother there to spend this Memorial Day with her was just an amazing experience.
Thanks. I appreciate your reflection on that. Somebody else who had a unique experience with their mother on pilgrimage is Michael Dobbs. Michael, you had a very unique experience, and you've been there twice. You've gotten to go, you went with your brother and your mother, who also are veterans of the military. Can you tell us about your experience with that, going on pilgrimage with them?
Yeah, sure. The first pilgrimage I went on was in 2015, and it was actually my mom who had told me about it. And it was kind of like it was a little bit of a retirement gift for me when I retired. And I went there, and it was such a good experience that I actually decided to go again, but I wanted to go on my own this time because there was things that I needed to work out without my friends and family there. So I went a second time, and the second time I was there, it was actually a real moving experience for me. I can remember in the Porta Uncula, just sitting there in quiet, and St. Maximilian Kolbe's name kept coming to my head for some reason. So it was just a real moving experience. My brother Daniel also had one on Laverna. I know my mom knows more about that one than me because she was there with him that time. But it was the pilgrim experience for me was like extremely moving. It's actually brought me closer to my faith.
I think that's an amazing experience. Thank you for sharing that with us. Your mother wrote us a review. Greg Masiello sent out. When we did the Pilgrimage Perspective the first time. Your mother gave a very moving experience that she has been gracious enough to let me share. That I think a lot of people, especially during the pandemic, have experienced. She said, "But I thought she thought of St. Francis in his times of solitude, when all of us have kind of been sheltering in place." And that was really what got her through. She also said, "I'm finding myself at this time entering into a more contemplative state, which is very difficult for a lot of people." So Lynette, thank you very much for being able to share that with us. I got a little frog in my throat when reading your reflection, because you are not the only one experiencing this during these very difficult times of COVID-19. I also would like to talk with Mary and Phil Dibbs. Are you here? No, that's okay. I do have other people I'd like to talk with. Dean Pedrati, who...
Sorry, so we are here. We just could not get
okay, I see.
in time. Sorry.
Oh, no, that's okay. No, I appreciate you volunteering your time and willing to talk about it. You also mentioned things about pilgrimage and your time in the pandemic, that it really helped you. Can you talk about that a little bit?
I guess I found myself reflecting back that Claire and Francis probably felt isolated and were off on their own many times in their life. And so I reflected and thought about that. Well, they've been through this in another time, 700 years before, or 800 years before we are. So maybe what we learn from them, we can put into our life today. And I found myself, and Phil and I do a lot of volunteer work things together, and we have our own separate interests, but I found myself reflecting back on a quote that I saw somewhere on the journey of the pilgrimage that was a St. Francis quote, and it says, "While we have the time, let us do good." So even in pandemic times, we found there was lots of ways we could still be reaching out to the community and doing good. And I think even though it was in some cases virtual or distant or dropping something off on somebody's doorstep and leaving, we were still being able to reach out in these quarantine isolated times and do good.
Yeah, actually, we've had fun dropping things off at people's doors with, of course, no note or anything. And it totally freaks them out, where did this come from? And we have a company here that makes custom popcorn, all different flavors, whatever. So we've been buying those variety bags and kind of making that as our goodwill gift for people. And it's hilarious. I mean,
well, we do leave notes sometimes. Sometimes it's surprise notes. We really want to get somebody cranked up, and then they call us and tell us, "Guess what happened today?" and blah blah blah. And we're just like smiling, like, "Yeah, we know." So, but.
Well, I want to thank you for that because
I just like the quote, "While we have the time left."
of course.
okay, I think we killed the phone. So yeah, you think about Francis, our isolation is nothing in comparison, right? It is. So I think if nothing else, it regrounds us that no self-pity that, oh my gosh, I can't do this. All my trips have been canceled. We can't do Thanksgiving together. We can't do this. We can't do that. Suck it up, buttercup. There's things that are much worse in life.
And hearing your story, I now understand why Greg Masiello calls you to the closest thing I've ever witnessed to walking and breathing saints in my lifetime.
Is he sick or?
I don't think Greg is sick, but he can tell you a little bit more. But I want to, just hearing that, I think we need more people in this world too. There it is. See, Greg, he's not sick. So I want to thank you for that, because it is an amazing thing to hear your story, paying it forward. Because in these times, we hear about this negative news and it's the counts are up here, the counts are up here, the deaths are increasing every day. And yet you two are paying it forward and making the world a better place. So I want to thank you for you guys doing that.
Well, thank you for those compliments. And Greg, we'll have to have a talk about, thanking you for your compliment, but boy, that was a pretty high up there compliment.
Yeah.
Well, to qualify that,
We don't see it that way, so.
well, I do see you doing the extraordinary with the ordinary. Father George Torak talked about that, and that's one of the things I did share with Andy, that you guys epitomize doing the extraordinary with the ordinary. Now, that being said, Andy, it's a little off. The walking saints for me are Peter and Bern, my cousins. You guys come close. You both do extraordinary. You both do extraordinary things with the ordinary, and I love you guys both.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. Onward.
Onward to Dean Pedrati. Not only has he been the puppeteer of the entire length of this meeting, so we have to thank him for that. He's been very accommodating, and may I add, he's doing this out of the free will accord. So Dean, I have to thank you for that, for puppeteering and making sure all things work and typing out messages and staying up late and going above and beyond what you were asked to do. So I want to thank you for that. But also, I need to mention what you are doing in Arizona. And in your time there, you work with veterans in the military chapter there, dealing with PTSD. It's an award-winning chapter that you're putting on there. Why do you continue to do work with veterans in Arizona?
I think there's a couple of reasons. I think one of the callings we've had as far as here at the Franciscan Renewal Center at the Casa Veterans Ministry is to do what we can to help veterans from their emotional and spiritual wounds and military service. And we offer we've done several retreats. And I think the drive and the desire is when I did the last couple of years with the fire department, we did the outreach training for the first responders across state. One of the most powerful elements of it was doing veteran panels, hugely moving, and it really drove me to say, you know, we've trained first responders, but what about civilians? 70% of society, like myself, are civilians, and they're clueless about what you have gone through and what you've done as veterans to make sacrifices and serve us. And so it was really about trying to bring it together to provide services, number one, for veterans, and also to reach out to the community and educate them and bring them around and say, you know, let's learn more about what the veteran or the military experience has been.
You recently went on pilgrimage as well. I believe it was last year. In talking with veterans and then going yourself, what was some of the things you got out of it?
I think for me, it really put everything together that it really drove the message that what we're doing and moving toward is the right thing. And I see, you know, many faces of folks that went to Assisi. I got to help Father Reverend Bill. I got to be the money changer. I was doing the euro to dollars and stuff, but it was just really amazing to have been there when I had gone to Ground Zero with Arizona Task Force for a week, and so I had my own issues, and so following that, I had studied Italian 3 different times in Perugia and spent a ton of time in Perugia. And so to go to Assisi and then go to Collestrada and see the connection between the two and what that story was, I think really, really, really impacted me in terms of what the service experience, the military experience was with St. Francis, how it impacted him and how he moved on, and what that shares for all of us in the military as well as first responders.
Well, we can't thank you enough for what you do. And I'm sure the veterans and the people you work with are very grateful for all the things that you have done and continue to do. So we thank you very much for that.
And I'll send everybody a little clip. The Franciscan Renewal Center this afternoon will be hosting a Veteran Day Rosary at 5 o'clock at Arizona Mountain Time. And so I'll shoot you a little clip if anybody would like to attend that.
Thank you, Dean. I appreciate that. Somebody else who's doing amazing work with veterans is Izzy Quintana. Are you here?
No.
Greg, in talking with Greg and talking about those who are willing to share for this episode, he specifically brought you up as well. You're the founder of the PFC Veteran Peer Support Group in New York. Would you be able to tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. Well, I'm actually not the founder. There are 26 different counties within New York that have the program.
Okay.
It was actually started about 7 years ago. And Joseph P. Dwyer was basically, he was a medic in a cavalry squadron for the 3rd Infantry Division, who basically, in a nutshell, didn't come back the same after serving, and he had a lot of demons. And he basically, he spent time in the VA. He was inpatient at a VA hospital for about 6 months. But when they released him, they just gave about 12 different prescriptions. And that was it. And then he was, basically he ended up dying of an overdose. His world ended up spiraling down, and he basically, he died from an overdose. So the main mission of the Joseph P. Dwyer Support Program, sometimes called Vet to Vet, as you can see on my shirt, is it's veterans providing support to other veterans to prevent suicide, incarceration, and harm to themselves and others. So as everybody knows, there's about 22 veterans that commit suicide every single day. And we're told that most of these veterans are not receiving services from the VA. So when you come out, everybody talks about reintegration, how difficult it is to leave the military and come back home, and it's very difficult. So issues that veterans have when they come home: anxiety, chronic pain, depression, grief and loss. They have physical limitations. They have PTSD. They have TBI, traumatic brain injury. A lot of veterans suffer MST, military sexual trauma. Obviously, if you're at war, you never come back the same, so you have moral injury. And therefore, all this leads to suicidal ideation. So the services that Joseph P. Dwyer provides throughout New York State are these. Number one, we have a peer mentoring program where mentors become battle buddies. They volunteer. We have mentors from World War II era to the present war on terrorism. And basically, they're there to be a battle buddy, a pal to different veterans. So they take a 15-hour military health, behavioral health course, basically telling about the different ways of spotting PTSD and how bad into it they are. And then they learn about all the different resources in the area, inside the VA, outside the VA, to help all veterans. So it's basically a peer-to-peer support program, similar to just veterans who shared similar experiences. So it's like someone walking in your shoes. They've been there, done that, so that you can relate to what they're saying, and you have credibility. That's the difference. You've been there, done that, so you know what this veteran's talking about. So we have the battle buddy things, one-on-one peer mentoring. We provide military culture to the community, information and referral to all the veterans. We have service animal interviews and referrals for them to get service dogs. We support all the family members, including Gold Star mothers. And what makes us unique as people organizations that help veterans is that all services are free to veterans, and mainly what makes us unique is that it's regardless of discharge. So I don't know if you guys know, but the VA, if you have a dishonorable discharge, a bad conduct discharge, the VA will not see you. A lot of the veterans out there, they got out of the military. They were kind of like thrown out of the military because they had issues. They had PTSD. So what does the command do? Instead of helping these veterans or get help, it's like you're a detriment to the unit. We need you out. You're a problem child. So you're considered broken. If you're broken, you don't feel as though you're part of the unit. You don't feel that brotherhood. It's like you're a disgrace here. You're out. Get them out. So a lot of these veterans are out here. So what do they do? Where do they go for help? So that's what makes us unique. We leave no man behind, like a military ethos. So we even go into, well, I'll tell you, so we provide, instead of like giving them the medications, come back, we'll see you next month. And I'm not saying that he's bad, because you definitely need the VA. You need clinicians. They need to help. But it's a combination. You also need that peer to make sure that you're okay, to follow along with you on your path and help you in whatever you need. So we provide alternative therapies for veterans, which include acupuncture, free acupuncture, mindfulness meditation, yoga, qigong. We just implemented tapping, which is emotional freedom techniques. Then we have different veterans writing workshops and creative writing. We do a lot of outdoor activities, hiking, walking, kayaking. Currently, we started these roundtable discussions about, let's talk about suicide, because it's such a taboo subject. But if we don't get out there and talk about it and help us realize if we're getting close to it, and in order to help other veterans and other people stop them from committing suicide, we need to lay it out on the table and discuss it. So we've been having every 22nd of the month, 22 veterans a day, we have these roundtable discussions where we do have like distinguished book writers and filmmakers that talk about suicide, and they're experts in their field. And we read their book, then we discuss it. So we have that. Like I said, we leave no man behind. We visit psychiatric centers, psychiatric wards, and look for veterans. Because one day when they're going to be coming out to the outside, everybody's not in there. When the doctor thinks they're okay to come back, they're going to be outside. So we want them to know that we're there to help them. They're going to have a family. Well, we go to the county jail. We visit veterans that are in jail because we don't want their world to stop. It doesn't end there. When you get out, we're there. Come contact us. We'll help you get housing. We'll help you get a home. You'll be part of our tribe. Trust us. We don't want them going back there. And so we do a lot of outreach with the community. One of the things that I've done, because I'm former law enforcement also, retired, is we've been going to the police academy in Rockland County and letting them know about our program, that it's an extra tool for the police department. So they're as first responders. They're the ones that get called. Hey, there's this veteran. He has nightmares at night. He goes crazy. There's this veteran. He goes outside and causes trouble. So we're telling them as a part of their tool belt that we're of assistance. If you think there's a veteran that's out there that's at risk, and before you arrest him, incarcerate him, or put him in the psychiatric ward, call us. We'll help him get whatever help, whether or not has an honorable discharge or not. We'll help that veteran. So you don't have to end up putting him in a psychiatric ward or incarceration.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but we're at there's a certain time limit here, and we need to thank you for what you do. Hey, I think it's particular. One of the things I hear is that you are there to help the veterans that would otherwise fall through the cracks, and that is not an easy thing to do. And our hats off to you. I mean, this is why we wanted to give you a forum to let others know what you're doing, because I think it's so very important, especially when you talk about the veterans who tried their best and ended up, for whatever reason, having fallen out of goodwill with the services, and then they find themselves with their back up against the wall afterwards. And the work that you guys do is tremendous. And I know my cousins rave about the work you do, and they see you on the lake a few times, but we really appreciate all the work that you're doing.
Thank you, Greg. Appreciate it.
You bet.
One more thing before we wrap up, Greg, is I have one reflection from Joanne Castillo. She gave a reflection a couple of months ago when talking with Greg, and she is very gracious in allowing me to read it for her. The question was, did the examples of Francis and Claire continue to influence your life after leaving pilgrimage? And she said this: yes, the lives of these two saints continue to influence my life every day. Learning more about the saints Francis and Claire strengthened my faith in the Lord. There was a time when St. Francis was unclear about what to do next, and he went to inquire from a bishop, a spirituality mature in the faith man of God, and he told Francis, where God guides, God will provide. That story that was read by one of the pilgrim veterans resonated well with me, because at that time, attending grad school out of state and away from family was such a big challenge for me, not just financially, but emotionally as well. During that time, God made a way for me to carve out time and resources to come away for 10 days and spend time with the Lord, and also meet fellow soldiers of this country and God's kingdom. She continues, I remember Father Conrad saying, take the healing power of St. Clare with you. I always remember this because I am a nurse and I have the opportunity to impact the healing power of Christ. And he gives this as a gift and as of the Holy Spirit. Learning about the miracles that are associated with Francis and Clare is encouraging for a believer like me and who would like to experience more of God's healing power. Indeed, God uses people like Clare to import his healing touch to people he loves and whom he created. a very powerful reflection. So we thank Joanna, wherever she is, for allowing us to share this. And in closing, I always tell people when it comes, and I steal this from Greg. So Greg, thank you for this. Pilgrimage always meets you in life wherever you need it to. In both of the pilgrimages that I have been to, it has met me where it is needed, whether helping me with anxiety, whether it helping me with a transition in life. It is a very powerful thing. And in the times of COVID-19, I remember my experiences in pilgrimage, in God kind of giving you a hug saying, it's all going to be okay no matter what is going on in your life. So I thank you all for being with us today. I thank all of the veterans for all that they have sacrificed and continue to give this wonderful country. And I turn it over to Greg.
Hey, thanks, Andy. Particularly appreciated the part that you ended with me. That was really cool. Thanks, Andy. Seriously, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Great job.
Thank you.
So I was reminded today that today's virtual pilgrimage is of Laverna. And I was reminded, interestingly, I was doing some chores before we settled down in this, and I was back in Laverna. It was just seemingly on its own, but maybe God working in the way God works. But I was reminded of a few people who had very transformative experiences at Laverna. You know, when you're up in the main part of Laverna on the mountain, there's this part that you walk down, and it's called the Sasio Specco. It's the jutting rock. We'll see pictures of it in just a second here in Smee's reflection. But before you go there, there's a little chapel off to the side. That's the chapel of St. Mary Magdalene. And on it, there's this altar top in which Jesus appeared to Francis one time. This is before he received the stigmata. And afterwards, he told Brother Leo, smear balsam, oil, water, and vinegar and wine all over this and anoint it, because this is sacred. This is a sacred place, a sacred item that the Lord has appeared to me on. And I've seen people just move to tears in that chapel. And then you go down the few more steps and you see this jutting rock, which we'll show her in a second. And as a matter of fact, Sharon Conway, I know you're on board, but John, your husband, he went down there. He came up a different man. It was like he went to Mount Sinai. You know what we envision.
He's here right now. If you want to have him share.
No, that's okay. I just want to know, in the interest of time, I do want to go on to it. But tell John we said hi. And it was like Mount Sinai. Moses, he went, instead of going up the mountain and coming down transformed, you went down the mountain, you came up transformed. So here, without further ado, I'm going to do some screen sharing and then show Sister Mary Elizabeth's beautiful reflection on Laverna.
Hi, this is Sister Mary Elizabeth taking you on a little pilgrimage tour to Laverna. Many pilgrims come to Assisi, and a few of them get to go to Laverna. But I think Laverna was one of Francis's sacred places to travel, to make a pilgrimage there. Laverna is a mountain in the Tuscan region of central Italy. It's about 80 miles north of Assisi, and I think we all feel it's truly holy ground. In 1213, Count Orlando of Chiusi, a wealthy nobleman, donated the mountain to Francis and his brothers. Donated, yes, a whole mountain, as a place suitable for prayer, penance, peace, and rest, and all things that might nourish the spirit. The historian Arnaldo Fortini's description account would make one wonder how suitable a place Laverna was. He writes, Laverna, it is a mountain surrounded by an immense cliff, rising vertically, cut off from the rest of the mountain on all sides. It is a mass of stone surmounted by furious storm clouds, a retreat for prayer in the harshness of winter, an altar in the heart of Holy Italy, between its two seas. As I said, I really think this was one of the sacred places that Francis came to travel. He, as Murray Bodo says so fondly, felt the joy of being elsewhere, away from home and the familiar, away from people like his parents and his brother and the brothers and sisters. A place like the cathedral or the feudal courts, and things like the smell from the city and from the fields below and the sounds of the marketplace. He was away from all that was familiar, and that stirred adventure and memories for him. And anyone who goes to Laverna, I think, feels that same longing until you have that first and final encounter, a sacred encounter, and you see from the light within you that you are actually home, wherever you are, for Christ makes a dwelling within us. And these encounters that Francis had at Laverna changed him forever. And I can say of the many times I've been, it continues to change me. This was the Laverna for Francis. It magnified his life, magnified his rhythm. It was up the mountain, down the mountain, out of the city and into the valley, alone and yet in communion, in fraternitas. But as the scholar Mike Blastic tells us, it defined for Francis, I think, that lifestyle, the rhythm of contemplation and compassion, by two very significant events that happened at Laverna. Listen to Bonaventure as he describes this experience from the 13th chapter. It was a custom for the angelic man Francis never to rest from the good. Rather, like a heavenly spirit on Jacob's ladder, he either ascended into God or descended into his neighbor. For he had so prudently learned to divide the time given to him for merit, that he spent some of it working for his neighbor's benefit in an ecstasy of compassion, and dedicated the rest to the tranquil excesses and ecstasies of contemplation. And there you hear that paradox of contemplation and compassion, that rhythm that he had so carefully put into his life. The two significant events that happened for Francis comes from the Fiorettis, and as it tells the legend, here on his sixth and final visit in 1224. It was at this time that he received the stigmata, an image that he first contemplated in the San Damiano cross that was crucified on his own body, and that he also, from his own experience, felt the compassion to write the praises of God for his brother Leo. Again, from the Little Flowers, it tells us that God wanted the mountain of Laverna to have a connection with Christ's passion on Golgotha. And I quote, "In order to show that the passion of Christ was to be renewed on that mountain in the soul of St. Francis by love and compassion, and in his body by the imprinting of the stigmata." I find the words very powerful as we remember it was the call at San Damiano at the very beginning of his conversion, that he was called to renew the church, to repair it, to rebuild it, because it was falling to ruin. And now on the mountain, he was called to be renewed there on that mountain by these two incredible experiences. The significance for Francis, I think, was powerful, and we find Laverna being sure at the point where he can show us the gift of this mountain. The times that I have been there, there are two pieces that I would like to mention. The one is, in fact, the grace and value of silence, silencio. You see that on all the other sanctuaries when you come into the sanctuary, and you also hear it when you make moves or too much noise. Silencio, silencio. You might remember that from being in the chapels. But the one distinction here at La Verna is you don't necessarily see silencio, but if you look carefully, it says ascolte, listen. And I think after you've been to those other sanctuaries, you come to know the pianissimo, the silence of La Verna that draws you in to listen, to hear. And I found I can actually hear silence. Yes, like snow falling. Not when you walk on it and you crush it, but really the falling of snow and the delicate movement that that is. I dare to say, from La Verna, I have come to be able to hear God's still voice. The mountain has taught me that. The other thing for me personally, and I think again from Francis, is I have learned a little bit more about what it means to be in solitude. It's a paradox because when I'm at La Verna, we lead the pilgrims, but there's a lot of time in which we, after the visit, we let them go free to walk about the mountain, to climb the mountain, to sit under the bird and listen to them. But it's in that solitude that so many of us pilgrims find that the emptiness is truly a fullness. For it is filled with God, God's goodness, God's calm. And it stirs perhaps an inner smile from a remembered joy, or maybe the warming of my heart when I think of a friend. And sometimes even I get an idea or a vision that seemingly comes from nowhere, but I know it's because of the solitude that this comes to me. These two gifts of listening and solitude, Francis taught me at the mountain of La Verna. And so when I'm there, often I am drawn, just like the other pilgrims, into the procession of prayer. The melodious praying of the friars that are there, the brothers walking in procession and taking us from the church to the Stigma Chapel. And I become one of those pilgrims, just another pilgrim, seeking love, as Francis did, as Bonaventure did, and so many of the brothers and sisters that have followed after Francis. It is here on La Verna that I choose once again, and every time again, to follow in the footprints of Jesus. I hope you too, by this virtual pilgrimage, can experience some of that listening in the silence and a little bit of God's life in the solitude.
Yes, Smee, beautiful. Very nice. All right, so from now, what we'd like to do now, if you refer to your schedules, we've changed up the schedules and the questions a little bit. Dean, do you have the set of breakout questions?
There you go.
So it's a little different than what we have on the schedule. I was able to send out evaluation forms and the new schedules. You should have them in your emails now. It went out a little late, and I apologize for that. There's always some technical glitch you have to deal with. But you can refer to your emails if not. But the questions are just a little different than what we had originally put on the first schedule. The icebreaker question is, who are the lepers of today's world and what stigmas do they bear? And the question the breakout question for the first session is, what have you learned about St. Francis that you did not know before the virtual pilgrimage? Now, what I'd like to do is just remind you all, we're gonna go out into breakout groups, look at what your breakout group number is as you go to your group, so you know how, which group you are when we come back together here in 15 minutes.
Greg, just a quick question. Do you want to go to breakout now, or do you want to take a 2-minute potty break?
Well, I'm always up for a 2-minute potty break. Why don't we say everybody come back? Come back at 12:55. My clock says on my computer 12:52. So we'll come back at 12:55.
Sounds good. We'll be set, ready to go.
All right, thanks, Steve. Conrad, while we're on break, how did the ceremony go for the veterans there on campus? If you are trying to respond, you are mute still, so. Oh, there he is. All right, guess we'll find out about it later. All right. So I just like to remind everybody, I see a number of people are on, they've muted their videos. When we go to the breakouts, please unmute your video so you can have a good sharing session if you can. I mean, some people don't have video, and we understand that. And then also, I do see a few people have wandered away in the last few seconds and are coming back. Yes, Edna, I'm talking about you. I see you there. So why don't we do the breakaways? Some people might come back in. Some people might be still on break, and they might trickle back in. Like I said, you can refer to your emails for the questions, or they're simple questions. Once again, who are the lepers of today's world, and what stigmas do they bear is the icebreaker. And what have you learned about St. Francis that you did not know before the virtual pilgrimage? We'll do 15 minutes. We'll be back in 15 minutes to discuss that, okay? All right, Dean.
All right, here we go.
Well, welcome everyone. I'll invite you to unmute yourselves if you haven't already, so that we can speak freely. There we are. Hello again. All right. Let's take some time with the question. The one up there whose name is Greg Masiello. I know that's not your name. What is your name?
John Sella.
John, for crying out loud, what's the matter with me? Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm
There it
sorry.
goes. There it goes. Greg just fixed it for me.
Okay, wonderful. Now I think everybody else, you are who you say you are.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, hi, Kathy.
Hi.
All right. Okay, well, let's take a little bit of time. We only have about 15 minutes. Actually, now we're down to about 14. So who are the lepers in today's world? And what are the stigmas that they bear? Who are they?
If I may, I think that Izzy was really onto something earlier about the vets who have either been dishonorably discharged or kind of forced out. I think they are kind of the lepers. Mentally ill, if you've got a severe mental illness, I feel like people don't really want to hire you. They don't want to be around you. Even if you're taking your medication and you're fully functional, I feel like those are the kinds of people that in today's world are just untouchables.
Mm-hmm. All right, yeah.
I see the same. I also will include the persons with disabilities. Everybody thinks folks, they're real, you know, they're real cute and stuff, but then it's really, they don't form a relationship. It's sort of like hi-bye thing. And then especially the children who have behavioral issues, and folks who cannot verbally communicate. They just sort of like smile and on you go. Like there's no personal connection. But I definitely also feel that folks with mental illness and those, like Izzy talked about, who were for some reason did fit into the norm of veterans leaving or had to leave, and any of the other people who are they just don't fit in. And you can see the folks, you could see them as you go places. You could tell some folks are just, they're like they're the leper. They're on the edges of the group.
Yeah. You know what I hear you saying, Kathy? People feel sorry for them, but they don't really relate to them.
Correct. And so that's very hard for them to form a communication. Correct. Yes. Feel sorry. That's the word I would say probably.
I'd like to add the homeless, because how many times do we walk in a convenience store and we pretend we don't hear them or we don't see them?
Yes. Yes.
Right.
Personally, I think we're all lepers for everyone else these days. There's all the things that people that you mentioned just now. Plus, you know, I have a good friend of mine whose son-in-law is a teacher, and he refused to allow a transsexual person to be in his classroom, and he was even willing to quit his job rather than accept that. Which, you know, to me, the girl is a leper, and he's also become a leper. And dare I say that the Democrats are lepers to the Republicans, and the Republicans are lepers to the Democrats. I mean, it's just such a fragmented society we're in right now, where I think there's so many groups that we just sort of push all kinds of sides, and that's a very sad thing.
And I want to also bring up people of color, that you know, so often people don't, the systematic racism there that is so strong that a lot of us won't even look at it or
is going on. Chime in if you have something to share. Be mindful that we are a little pressed for time with your answers, but let's just look at question 2 together as a larger group. In what you learned about St. Francis' struggle with his war wounds, how might these insights help you manage your own woundedness or the wounds of others or someone close to you? All right. So we've learned some things about Francis and his relationship with his war wounds and how that affected him and transformed him. So given those lessons that we've learned together, how might we use that in our own lives with our own wounds and the woundedness of perhaps the wounds of people close to us? Now, don't make me start choosing on people.
I have a thing. So recently at my work, we did a kind of like a book club, and we read Murray Bodo's Surrounded by Love, the 7 Teachings of St. Francis. And one thing that struck me that I had in common with St. Francis, although not quite like everyone else might think, is that I had to go through cancer treatment, and I was in the medicine they were giving me was in such a high dose. I had to be in isolation for 10 days. And it was started the Monday following my dad dying. And so I was having to deal with the sickness and struggles of the medicine and being isolated, as well as dealing with my dad dying. And that was the first time I kind of felt like I might be able to understand what Francis was going through. And although I wasn't in prison, it kind of felt like it. And I was, not feeling good at all. And then when I got out, what I longed for was a hug from someone while I was in there. But when I got out, I didn't even want anyone touching me. So it was such a drastic change from what I was longing for while I was in prison. But when I got out, I still felt isolated because I didn't want that interaction anymore. So it was something that I struggled with, and I kind of felt like I had a connection with Francis, that I kind of understood what he was going through, even though it wasn't necessarily prison.
Mary, somebody chatted while you said that, and Sharon chatted. She said, yes, that's how it feels. And I think what Sharon was referring to is there's this desire, what you said in terms of desire to be hugged. And yet at the same time, it hurts when somebody gets too close. And so finding a way to deal with all our needs for affection becomes a journey. But beautifully said, Mary, was the whole idea of how do you put that then on a spiritual plane? And that's what our hope with doing our pilgrimages and these retreats is, that somehow they lead to a different plane other than a playing field, other than what traditional therapies or other modes have to offer. But to put it on a spiritual plane somehow makes it, as Father George Torak put it, helps us deal with the pain so it's not necessarily suffering. Somebody else.
I'd like to say something very much along those lines, if I may. Part of that spiritual plane that you're mentioning, I think, really exists in this world, in finding Christ within one another. And that struck me most during this retreat, or pilgrimage, when the idea was shared that after his experience in war, St. Francis did not deal with his wounds by going inward, but rather outward. And I'm not a veteran, but I think I came from a family that kind of under the table, it was sort of understood you don't share your weakness with people. And I bet the military culture is an awful lot like that. And so to actually share those wounds and your vulnerabilities and your weakness, it is, I think, can be a great gift. And I'll close just by saying it reminds me very much of a story that maybe some of us here are familiar with. There's Toni Morrison's novel, Beloved. This is a novel just before the Civil War. It's actually based on a true story, where the lead character, played by Oprah in the movie of it, escapes from slavery, bringing her children with her, and she tries to kill her children, and succeeds, in fact, in order that they don't get captured and returned to slavery. And then the woman has to deal with what she's done, is killing her own children. And the healing occurs only at the end of the novel, when she finally emerges from sort of self-isolation and is embraced by the community who knows that she's a murderer, but they say, look, it's been long enough. Let's all heal here. And it's the community that helps her. And maybe, a pilgrimage like this could be that sort of social environment that can help that kind of feeling.
Robert, well said. Well, beautiful. Other thoughts?
Well, yesterday, I had an incident where I made an illegal U-turn and I cut somebody off. And as I cut him off, I just waved to thank him for letting me in. Well, apparently he wasn't letting me in, and he was cursing me out. So I backed up just to give him the full pleasure of what he wanted to say. And I was acutely aware that, I'm on a pilgrimage with St. Francis. So I said to him, how about we not make a big deal out of this, either one of us, and we won't let our blood pressure go up. And he wasn't having it. So I did my best. Outwardly, I did okay. Inwardly, I realized, I got a ways to go. I really have a ways to go, but I'm working on it. So,
Peter, I was getting ready to go on pilgrimage, and so I took a little break. I flew into Rome. I needed to I took a little a tour of Europe in between beforehand. So I took an easy jet flight to Nice for like 5 days. I was going back to Rome, and next to me on the EasyJet plane was this guy who was just elbowing me like left and right. So finally I said, "Hey, can you keep your elbows on your side of the divider?" And he started like doing this to me. And I'm like, oh no. And as he's doing this to me, somebody is writing to me, texting me, "Hey, somehow I got a text. I think we landed at some point, and have a great pilgrimage with St. Francis of Assisi." So here you guys like, oh God, what am I going to do with this? But but thanks, Peter. Thanks for.
I think the thing with St. Francis is that he was a man, God understood him, and he succeeded. And through him, I have hope that I can beat this too.
Nice, Sharon. Sharon, I have no doubt after I saw everything that Bijou got into, you have a number of guardian angels looking out after you and your service animals, and now it's Sodality. Beautiful. Thank you. One more. Jessica, are you going to take it from here?
Just real quick. I just wanted to think that one of the things that I'm learning as a supporter and as a veteran is that I'm not praying so much for patience, but for the removal of impatience, and that I can understand and meet people where they're at, like the gentleman in the car. He was going to be mad. So if you allow them to be mad and just kind of, okay, I'm going to be here. I'm going to do what's mine to do, and just have that spirit of allowing people to meet you where you're at and meeting them where they're at. And that's kind of what I'm bringing out of this.
Along that line is if you look at the life of St. Francis and some of his experiences, and Peter, going back to your experience, it's pretty well accepted when he went to meet the when he wanted to meet the Sultan, when he was on his went on the crusade, and then he went across to Egypt and has this meeting. He was probably held prisoner for a few days before they let him in further in. He probably got his ass kicked a few times during that time. So just because you're I think St. Francis would say, join the club, but I didn't always succeed. Sometimes I came away with a black eye, and so it's not changing the world. It's just how we can change the world. We can only change the way we affect it, and hopefully that does catch on if we affect it.
You know what I find, Greg? I find that you know, we go to mass every day, right? And it's very challenging when you go to mass every day. You know, you hold yourself to a higher level, you know, so in situations like that, it'll come up again. I'll get another opportunity, you know, I know. And I think about it at mass and say, how would you do it differently? You know, and it's internal. I pray for him. I pray for the guy.
Hey, Peter, I think in knowing your experiences, in looking where you came from, that construction worker you ran into.
That's good. Yeah. I've come a long way.
Like, wow, heads and tails above where that was.
Yeah, Greg knows me. Yeah, I've come a long way.
I love you, Peter. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks. Okay, listen, why don't we do, with that in mind, there's so much more out there. Let's do a quick hot wash. Randomly, let's hear, in terms of this virtual pilgrimage, give us 3 ups and 3 downs. Let's start with the what worked for this pilgrimage. Give us 3 ups. Let me write this down. What are the 3 things that are the 3 positives we can take away and say, okay, this worked?
I really like that you have the civilians in with us. They gave a very different view. It helps us to understand how other people are viewing us. I think that really worked.
So the civilian, non-civilian sharing was a good mix. It all kind of worked out pretty well.
Hey, Greg, I'll scribe these for you. I got word up.
Thanks, Dean. Appreciate it.
I was very grateful for the friars and sisters with us. I thought they added a great deal to the entire pilgrimage experience, their expertise and their insight. Thank you for that.
Robert, do you go by Bob or Robert?
Rob is good.
Rob, I get to rub shoulders with these sisters and friars, and they're amazing people.
I can tell that. Yeah.
Every day, I think of, I left St. Francis home. I couldn't go back over there to be with the people. But I do call them on the telephone, and I can get maybe 5 people at a time individually, and that helps me. And it makes better for them, that they know that they're still connected. After 25 years, I worked over there, St. Francis home. So it's a sadness that can't be there with them, but you can take things into the front door and just set them there. But, it's not the same. You used to be able to sit outside on a patio with them, and all. So I miss that stuff.
Well,
and they do too.
Sister Patricia, if I might, it might not be the same, but this is a good example. You're here with us, you're sharing your joy in the virtual world, and it's just as good as being there with you in the atria. Thank you very much, Sister Patricia.
I appreciate all that you're doing too.
Thank you. One more up.
Greg, I think the variety of time has helped too. Just, some at night, some during the day, Saturday. It fits into lots of different people's schedules, right? We weren't able to make everyone, and same thing for other people, but it wasn't all just regimented to one time frame. So I think that's a good thing that you've done.
We really tried to kind of create the same kind of spirit of what you get in pilgrimage. And so presentations, site visits, and sharing. And so thank you. I do feel sometimes it can only go so far. And I guess that's the way it is, right? You really have to go to Assisi and Rome and to experience it firsthand. But yeah, thank you. So having the different things in different time frames helped. And thanks.
I have to compliment you on your speakers and the topics chosen. They're excellent. And the variety of meditations really made a lovely, lovely virtual pilgrimage.
Thanks.
And I think for those of us who've had the great blessing of being there already, for me anyway, this really brought it back. Really brought it back.
Wonderful. Now, okay, so those are the things that worked. How can we do this better? You guys have gone through. You've gone through it. That you are the participants of the first virtual pilgrimage. Give us 3 ways of improving, because we want to make this a good of experience as possible.
So this is Grace Caputo, and am I talking? Yes. So one thing, and this might just be me that I missed it, but I think sort of setting the expectations or giving the framework of trying to make this a pilgrimage time in the midst of your busy life. I think if I had really thought about it or been invited to think about that, how will I make this pilgrimage, this time for pilgrimage in my life, be set aside as much as going physically away? Because it took me a day and a half to figure that out. So, and maybe I'm just slow and maybe I missed it and you did provide that, but if not, I invite you to do that in the future, just to sort of invite someone to think that this is pilgrimage and how are you going to do this? Because if you're going 90 miles an hour, even in isolation, then you need to really, pilgrimage is not my 90 miles an hour. So that's my suggestion.
It's such a beautiful way of framing it. Hey, we would like to make this a pilgrimage amidst your busy lives. It's a 10-second statement, but it provides a framework, and at least it puts you in the, okay, this is what we want to accomplish. Thank you. And beautifully said.
So, as a retiree with no place to go, I felt I enjoyed it. I was able to set the time apart. And I enjoyed the fact that we had so many participants. That was really a plus. But what was a negative is that we didn't have long enough sessions because we all tended to be gabby. And longer sessions for discussions is what I recommend.
That I feel like where I am right now, and I can see like, wait, what worked, what didn't work. It does feel like we could do the breakouts better.
Yeah, thanks.
Well, I just want to say I really did like the breakout sessions because it was a lot of good sharing. I learned a lot from listening. And I originally went to this signed up for this because I thought I was going to get to see a CC. And it was more talking than it was looking at, well, we saw a lot of the same pictures, but those pictures of the valley and the mountains were just awesome to me. I can only imagine how it would be to be there in person and sense that silence. That beautiful deep silence there.
You know, while you were speaking, Carol, somebody chatted to me saying, "Hey, maybe more visuals," and maybe that's a good idea. As to say, take a time out and say, "This is," show you some picture and explain what it is. Spend a little moment with it, but at least it gets us back. This is we're in the place. Or even like today's the Laverna, we could have shown more pictures of Laverna. Although we're still going to do the virtual one at the end. That's a good suggestion. Very good suggestion.
And also, I really did need to take my own potty breaks and get food.
Yeah, that is something we need to work in better. Yes, that is something we need to do better.
Hey, Greg, this is Lena. Go ahead, Sharon.
Okay. No, go ahead, Lena.
One thing I think that would be helpful for folks is a better understanding of what to expect. And maybe some guidance about time that would be needed during the day. You had some very meaningful activities, for instance, taking a walk for 2 to 3 miles or setting a certain amount of time aside. So I think, to give people the right mindset, the ability to be able to plan, to really get the most out of this, that would be helpful for people.
Thanks, Lanya. I agree. But if I could, I wasn't quite sure what to expect to begin with, so maybe that might have been. We do have but point well taken. I'm not. I
offer that as a positive opportunity, certainly not as anything negative.
Yeah,
this has been a wonderful experience.
Lena, I do appreciate that. That's I think you're right on with that though too.
And I as I mentioned, breakouts go very quickly.
True.
Greg, I think a couple more days. They wouldn't necessarily have to be 2 meetings a day. To get a little more used to applying this more to my daily busy life, because I'm just beginning to learn to be quiet and just beginning to hear things, and it's already over.
Yeah, Sharon, I would think it would be difficult to do more than 2 or 3 days at a shot. But now, that being said, now that we've done the first one, we're kind of getting our feel for what works, what could we do a little better. We plan on building it. Now, my cousin Bernadette had this thought of like, hey, what do you think of a virtual pilgrimage walk with St. Francis through the messiness of life? And I talked to Father John Cella here. He's already doing planning for that. He's already telling the board, his board of directors this morning, that we're working on a new virtual pilgrimage. So maybe as a way of compensating for that, we'll do this more often and invite you. And please stay tuned if you're interested in continuing the journey. I probably the next one we'll do will happen after. Christmas sometime, probably mid-January, okay? Now, I would like to say one of the things that I thought was fabulous to bringing from the virtual world to the virtual, yeah, what's up, Herman? Herman, Herman, I did send evaluation forms to people, so I would just ask that maybe you fill
one of the things,
Herman, just in the interest of time, I don't want to cut you off, but we just need to, I just really mindful of the time where we're at. The evaluation forms are there, so can you just fill that out, or maybe email me afterwards, and I'll get in touch with you, and we can come offline with this. Okay? I just wanted to say, Mary Beth, you were mindful.
okay, I was just saying that.
I'm sorry. Your mindful moments were spectacular. I thought that was a great way of integrating some mindfulness into it, which then brought everybody was doing something, even though we were all doing it in our own corners of the world. We were all doing it around the same time, which I think may connected us. So at this point in time, what I'd like to do is this. You have a choice. You can stay on board. We're going to show the virtual pilgrimage of the virtual piece of Laverna now. And so, but you can either stay on board and watch it with us, or this is like, we've already taken almost 2 hours of your time up. This might be a good time for, if those of you who would like to go, we understand. Conrad is going to give a blessing for those who would like to go. And then for the rest of you, please stay on board. And as soon as the blessing is done, we will show the Laverna virtual pilgrimage.
This is the prayer that Francis prayed before the crucifix. And it's, most high and glorious God, enlighten the darkness of my heart and give me, O God, true faith and certain hope, a perfect charity, sense, and knowledge, that I may carry out your holy and true will. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me so love. Where there is injury, let me so pardon. Where there is doubt, let me so faith. It is in giving that we receive. It is in pardoning that we are pardoned. It is in dying that we are born. That we are born to eternal life. The Lord give you peace. Amen.
Hey, Dean, before we go, can we mute everybody out? And then I will, thank you.
Got it.
Mute me too.
Mute.
Greg, we're not hearing audio, I don't think.
The sound goes with it. You hear that okay?
Yes, we got sound. Greg, I think the sound is coming through your computer speaker, not through the video.
Okay, so we've got some tech. So Dean,
I've got the YouTube up here if you want me to try and screen share it on my end.
yeah, let's do that.
We'll give it a go.
Just got to make sure that you click the button or the check mark that says share computer audio.
Thanks, Andy. I keep forgetting that I did it. Let me know if it works.
Blood and serum of some sort.
It's not at the beginning.
In conjunction with the military veteran pilgrimages, presents a virtual pilgrimage. Today we travel 100 kilometers north of the city of Assisi into the Tuscany region to Mount Laverna.
We adore you, Lord Jesus Christ, and we bless your holy name. Truly, your cross and passion gives us life and healing. Truly, your cross and passion gives us life and healing.
Life and healing were two quests Francis had throughout his life as he strove to find out the reason for his involvement in war and why was God calling him to this new way of life. So as we said before, Laverna was one of his favorite sanctuaries. Located 100 kilometers north of Assisi, in the 13th century it was only approachable by climbing rocks. And as the Rangers and the Marines would come in the bus with us up to these different crags and mountains, they were talking about rappelling. It would be a challenge. Francis did it on foot. He did it 6 times back and forth. How he did it? Sheer determination to find out what these wounds of war really meant. When he began his journey, his quest, coming back from war, back in Assisi, the Valley of Spoleto we talked about earlier, he found this chapel with this cross hanging, called the Cross of San Damiano, because it was in the chapel of San Damiano. And as he knelt gazing at this cross, it was different than any other image he'd ever seen before. Why? Because the eyes were open, and his hands and his feet were clearly wounded. Now, on the sides of this image of Christ, there are witnesses. I like to say, on the whole cross, there are 3 military personnel on this cross who are also absorbed by this mysterious Christ. He went to Laverna, and he kind of scoped the area and saw all this beauty in the Cesentino Valley. And then eventually goes down into the depths of the crags, and he finds this, what they call now, the Sasso Spico. It's a huge boulder that was almost like it's falling on you, but it's wedged between these rocks. Francis has a vision. as the legend says, that when Good Friday occurred, when Christ died, the whole earth shook and this gigantic boulder came smashing down. And he decided that he would sleep there and concentrate on this whole idea of the wounds. The wounds. Easter. Jesus appears and goes and sees his apostles who are incredulous that he's really alive. So to prove to them that he's really the same person but different, he shows them his wounds. And it's almost as if he's asking them to feel a solidarity with him, with their wounds, so that they too would become, as it were, wounded healers, going back into the world, having experienced something that they would like to share with others to make their burden a little bit light.
Mountain. The times that I have been there are two pieces that I would like to mention. The one is, in fact, the grace and value of silence, silencio. You see that on all the other sanctuaries when you come into the sanctuary, and you also hear it when you make moves or too much noise. Silencio, silencio. You might remember that from being in the chapels. But the one distinction here at La Verna is you don't necessarily see silencio, but if you look carefully, it says ascolte, listen. And I think after you've been to those other sanctuaries, you come to know the pianissimo, the silence of La Verna that draws you in to listen, to hear.
So much of Francis that he says that when he first went to the lepers, he was repulsed by them. But then when he did mercy with them, when he entered into their circle and lived with them, he said what before had been frightening and even disgusting suddenly became sweetness and delight. And then Francis says, it was after that then I left the world and began on his journey. So what is so fascinating is that Francis of Assisi marks the beginning of his spiritual life when he is with those who are similar to him. Those who were lepers, those who were outcasts. By then he was ridiculed by family, by neighbors, by classmates. They thought he was off his rocker, that he dressed differently. He dressed in rags. He didn't comb and wash his hair. He was disheveled. He spent time up in the mountains, hiding in the caves, coming into the city, kind of scaring people, but then trying to readjust and not getting back into it very well. But when he was down in the lower valley outside of Assisi and lived in the commune with the lepers, he had a very profound experience of finally being at home. And the healing began in a very profound way. building again after his encounter with the lepers. And he would move all through what we now call Italy, up in Tuscany region, down in, around Perugia, Assisi, Umbria. He would get away, and he would take great delight in being in wooded, remote areas. And he would go up into Tuscany, and there was a beautiful countryside. And even today, it's gorgeous. There's hills and mountains and streams and valleys, and you could hide there easily. Francis would go there. And there was a count who owned a large part of the land, Count Orlando de Chiusi. And Francis was coming through the region. By then he had the reputation as a popular preacher, kind of a charismatic hero, a folk hero. And the Count invited Francis and the one or two brothers, we don't know how many, who were with him, over to his castle. And during that time of the visit, there was a family wedding that the Count was having. And so he invited Francis to say a few words at the banquet. And Francis got up and spoke so eloquently that the Count was profoundly moved. And he thought, what this man needs, he needs a place where he can get away. He needs a place that he can get away without trying to bargain with people or to pay for rent or whatever. So the Count literally gave Francis La Verna, this mountain. And there was a very interesting penance that was given if you killed anyone in battle. And the penance was to make a 40-day Lent of prayer and abstinence, abstaining from certain foods and everything. There's a time of penance, like our Lenten periods within the church today. But Francis of Assisi, all the last 20 years of his life, had a practice of making 4 Lents every year. He never told the other friars that if they wanted to become a follower of him, if they wanted to become a good Franciscan, they would have to start doing these penitential periods each year. No, he kept that for himself, which indicates to me that he was atoning for the sin that he had committed in battle by taking the lives of at least 4 people that he remembered each year. Now, one of the periods of penance that he was observing was when he went up to Mount La Verna in anticipation for the feast of St. Michael in September. And when he was at La Verna in prayer, it's a beautiful, now a state park, federal property in Assisi, outside of, in Tuscany, outside of Siena and up near Florence. When he was in this wilderness by himself with Brother Leo, Francis one day was in prayer, and in the prayer he was overcome with the presence of God, a very powerful, powerful experience, and he was blown away. He was knocked down on the ground. When he came to, he had wounds on his hands and on his side and his 2 feet. And the skin that had ripped open turned into like a big scab, like the sharp point of a nail coming out on the other side. Leo tells us, and Francis would probably related this to Leo, that when he was in prayer, he saw a seraph, he saw a six-winged angel, and that was covering the naked body of a crucified man. And this seraph, we come to understand as Jesus. The seraph came close to Francis, and in their proximity with one another, Francis is knocked unconscious and wakes up bleeding. Now this is 2-3 years before Francis dies. And the next 3 years of his life, he couldn't walk well. He had to wear padded slippers because of the wounds in his feet. He was constantly oozing blood and serum of some sort. Francis was trying in all different ways to become one with, follow the example of Jesus Christ, saying that the rule of the life of the Friars Minor is to follow the gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ. That's our way of life. And Jesus is saying, Francis, that's not even enough. Because of our love, I want to share with you what I can't share with many others. I want to share with you my pain. I want to share with you the suffering that I have when I'm walking among the societies and the population of the world. I want to share with you something that is so deep and personal and intimate, my pain. And so, Francis then blossoms, his body blossoms with the wounds of Jesus Christ. It's a sign of profound intimacy. Francis began to even look like Jesus, the Christ, the wounded Savior.
The other thing for me personally, and I think again from Francis, is I have learned a little bit more about what it means to be in solitude. It's a paradox because when I'm at Laverna, we lead the pilgrims, but there's a lot of time in which we, after the visit, we let them go free to walk about the mountain, to climb the mountain, to sit under the bird and listen to them. But it's in that solitude that so many of us pilgrims find that the emptiness is truly a fullness, for it is filled. For it is filled with God, God's goodness, God's calm. And it stirs perhaps an inner smile from a remembered joy, or maybe the warming of my heart when I think of a friend. And I found I can actually hear silence. Yes. Like snow falling. Not when you walk on it and you crush it, but really the falling of snow and the delicate movement that is. I dare to say, from Laverna, I have come to be able to hear God's still voice. The mountain has taught me that. These two gifts, of listening and solitude Francis taught me at the Mountain of Laverna. And so when I'm there, often I am drawn, just like the other pilgrims, into the procession of prayer. The melodious praying of the friars that are there, the brothers walking in procession and taking us from the church to the Stigma Chapel. And I become one of those pilgrims, just another pilgrim, seeking love, as Francis did. It is here on Laverna that I choose once again, and every time again, to follow in the footprints of Jesus. I hope you too, by this virtual pilgrimage, can experience some of that listening in the silence and a little bit of God's life in the solitude.
Laverna shakes with his whole experience of creation, the whole experience of being wounded, and what we do with it. And that's why when we sing, "We adore you, Lord Jesus Christ, and we bless your holy name. Truly your cross and passion gives us life and healing. Truly your cross and passion gives us life and healing." As Cross of San Damiano, back in the Spoleto Valley, impressed Francis in his heart, Laverna impressed it in his flesh, went forward and shared with the world there was hope, life, and healing, peace and good.
you know, research shows that after you've been on, well, it's for vacations, not necessarily pilgrimage, but I'm sure the same applies, that if you can imagine your experience on pilgrimage, vacation, you can achieve that same sense of refreshment that came along with it. So those of you who have gone on pilgrimage or have journeyed to Assisi, I encourage you now to imagine your time there and regain that sense of peacefulness, that sense of beauty, that sense of affirmation that came from those journeys. All right, thank you all for being joining us on Veterans Day. Smee has a closing prayer for us.
A beautiful experience for all of us, and you can see this wonderful image of the sun setting on the western sky of the city of Assisi. And the sun sets on this pilgrimage, although the pilgrimage doesn't really end. We talked about that earlier. But I hope that this experience has been wonderful for you. Everything that's happened has been real and genuine. So trust the spirit that has stirred in your hearts. You may have had an annunciation of your own, heard a voice that you hadn't heard before, or a familiar one. Maybe a visitation, a special encounter over these last 3 days. And I believe probably a little of a nativity, a new birth that you bring before the Lord and present and continue to find him in the temple. Our experiences have touched the lepers of our day, have allowed us to be courageous about our wounds, and to not be so fearful of the silence and solitude before us. We say ciao. Our pilgrimage for now has come to an end. But we are all called to continue the work of rebuilding and repairing and renewing our society, our church, our very lives. Help us to find our own Portiunculas, our own Lavernas, our own mountains and our own valleys, where we become better, not bitter. We pick up our cross, as Francis did, and we wear our tau. We bear the tau in our outstretched arms, exposing our wounds and our woundedness. We become the sign of God's love among us, incarnate. With the healing power of Claire, I bid us all to go in peace, to love, and to serve. So wherever you are, wherever you go, you are peace and all good. And in our prayer, know that as pilgrims, we are not in control. We're not really in a hurry. Help us, Lord, to walk in faith and hope, to greet everyone with peace, and to bring back from this pilgrimage only and all what you, our Holy One, has given us. Make us instruments of your peace. Amen.
Amen. Thank you all for joining us. Happy Veterans Day. I did send assignments to everybody. Hey, Peter. I did send assignments to everybody. There's a mindful moment for Veterans Day. And also the assignment for today is to thank a veteran for their service. So as part of that assignment, thank you, veterans, for your service. Thank you for joining us.
Pache, thank you, thank you.
Take care, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, all of you, for your service. God bless you.
Thank you.
And everyone, and heal you.
For their service. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for a wonderful pilgrimage.
Yes.
Thank you
you.
for making it so.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Hey, Peter. Hey.
Thank you, veterans.
Oh, there you are.
It's all good.
Thank you, veterans.
Everybody who
Yeah.
put together.
Peace and all good.
Another lesson learned, huh, Peter?
Yeah, yeah. Another lesson learned. Everybody focusing on
It's been amazing, Greg. Thank you so very much.
Yeah, thanks.
All
Thank
of
you.
for putting this together. It's been
Thank you.
beautiful.
Thanks, Grace.
Bye.
Yeah, I'll be in touch.
Gracias.